recent years, I have fallen out of love with the MCU. We all know the story. The MCU was once something so big that it felt like just about everyone had some form of passing interest in it, yet now it feels like the only reason the MCU exists is for film news accounts to tweet incredibly concerning headlines about the future of the franchise. Why would I want the Blade movie to have Blade not be the main character? But through all of the negativity about the last year and a half or so of Marvel content, there was one thing keeping me more engaged than your average fan, and that was Ms. Marvel. For the uninitiated, I really like the Ms. Marvel comics. I grew up with the character, and in stark contrast to that love, I have about 6 videos worth of complaints for the show, and 1 video's worth of compliments for the game. But the major highlight coming out of that Disney Plus series that I despise so much was the lead performance of Iman Vellani's Kamala Khan. Genuinely, she has such an infectiously fun screen presence and deep respect for the source material that was almost entirely wasted on a script that didn't do anything for anyone in her MCU debut. For a show that firmly demonstrated that it didn't get the source material, you could really feel the love for every corner of Marvel Comics coming from Iman Vellani. So despite my middling opinions on the series, I swore to myself that the second they gave this character a chance to work on the big screen, I'd have my ass in a theater. And as such, my ass was in a theater last week to go see The Marvels. And well, it's a colossal financial disappointment. This movie has swiftly earned itself the title of lowest opening box office for an MCU film, and that includes shit like The Incredible Hulk. Critic reviews, while mostly positive, cite the same issues as a lot of past MCU failings, all the worst coming off the less than lackluster reviews of the last MCU project, Secret Invasion. And these critiques have been contextualized by the very public general ineptitude Disney has shown towards giving any of its workers their fair due, with actors and writer strikes, VFX houses shutting down, and apparently no showrunners at all for any of the MCU series. It's not hard to see why people reacted so negatively to the Marvels. It all makes perfect sense. Except for one teeny tiny issue, and that is, the Marvels isn't bad? I genuinely feel like I've entered some kind of bizarro world whenever I go onto social media and see talk of this movie, because the way some people talk about it, you would think that it's the worst MCU movie ever made, a sign that the MCU is dead and over and never coming back. But it's really not. Just going off of first impressions, the movie starts with one of the most dynamic and interesting fight scenes I have seen in one of these in quite some time. And then the following scene right after that is a really long one take where all of the characters just decompress after the crazy fight. And it's like, a one take for a scene where all of our main cast is just taking a breather? That's passion, that's soul, that's love, that's a director who made sure that their voice was heard throughout the production. The main conflict here is that these 3 seemingly unrelated characters keep switching positions every time they use their powers, and this results in some shockingly creative action sequences. This movie has its fight scenes down pat. They really run with this gimmick of teleporting characters, and it's such an engaging experience because of it. Action in Marvel movies tends to be pretty messy, with a lot of quick cuts and shaky cam close-ups, and as such, I really respect the hell out of this film for keeping everything nice and watchable. These fights are choreographed in such a way that you can really keep a good track of where everyone is and everything going on, a feat all the more respectable with how chaotic the teleporting can get. And this teleporting thing, that's that pure comic booky schlock that we never get anymore. It's a certain vibe that knows it's a tid silly, but it's so confident in its presentation that you don't really mind. And the director pulls it off flawlessly. Nia DaCosta brings a new energy to a lot of these characters that feels really at home with where the MCU wants to be tonally. It's funny, there's clear jokes being told to the audience, but it's not that level of insufferable self-indulgent humor that the MCU commonly gets flack for. Especially with the aforementioned Kamala Khan. I feel like it's very easy to write yourself into a corner with a purposefully cringier character, but they handle her with grace too. She basically plays as the plucky comedic relief to the 2 straight men of Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau, with the bulk of the movie being a space road trip adventure that is entirely carried by their on-screen chemistry. I feel like I can't sing the praises praises of Iman Vellani enough. She is the story's heart and its comedic center, and I am beyond happy that they seem to be positioning Ms. Marvel as a frontrunner for whatever the MCU does next. The rest of the cast isn't as standout as Iman, but they're all pretty good. With the more punchy comedic tone of this film, I feel like a lot of characters who have been mostly limited to just straight-faced monologuing have had a chance to do a little more with their performances, and I think that's cool. And the characters who are already just funny side characters shine even brighter in a film that's playing to their strengths. Like Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury was already a comedic side character in most of these movies, but I feel like it plays stronger here because the film itself is matching his energy. I didn't watch Secret Invasion, but I might have to go back if his performance is anywhere near as charismatic as it is here. Also, I didn't watch Secret Invasion, and that had no impact on my enjoyment of this plot. The Marvels, being a film that stars a late-game MCU character and 3 characters who have independent series that they starred in, has naturally received a lot of pushback due to the committal nature of that. Why would I watch the team-up movie if I haven't seen all of the shows where they are the star? And like, I get it, but things are no worse here than in your typical Marvel fare if you haven't watched all the other ones. I know for a fucking fact that not everyone who watched Captain America Civil War watched Ant-Man, but they explained the origins and connections good enough so you understand what's happening when he gets really big, and they do the same thing here. In fact, I might go out on a limb and say that watching this film might be a better introduction to these characters than the shows they originate from. In retrospect, maybe they should have marketed this as less of a team-up and more of a sequel to Captain Marvel with these guys coming along, because I can't imagine leading this film with 2 characters that your average unplugged kind of Marvel fan dad has never heard of did this movie any favors. It feels like most of the things wrong with the release of the Marvels have nothing to do with the movie itself, and more so just the climate of the MCU going into it. Maybe if they released this film before the colossal disappointments of Ant-Man Quantumania and Secret Invasion, there would be more people hopeful about the future of the MCU. Maybe if they made Ms. Marvel a movie instead of a show where they completely misrepresented the character, changed her powers, and spent most of the runtime on a plot that went nowhere in hopes of setting up mysteries that still haven't been properly answered a year and a half later, the character would have excited people not named RVRocks. Maybe if the actor's strike didn't overlap with the promotion window, the pure charisma shared between these 3 on screen could have carried on into interviews for different news outlets or Hot Ones, igniting a lot of Twitter stan culture into going to theaters. Maybe if the marketing was better, more people would have given the movie a shot. Most of the things that I just gushed about, the interesting fight scenes, incredible on-screen charm of our cast, and the comedic elements, were barely present in any of the trailers for the film, which is incredibly annoying when you're trying to edit a video about it. Seriously, the final trailer for this film uses the classic Avengers theme, has flashbacks to both Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, and if that wasn't enough, it teases some big revelation that will be at the end. And having seen the movie, I'm not even sure what that revelation was supposed to be. It's like, no wonder people hate your movie, Disney. You're literally clickbaiting it. There's a lot of coulda, shoulda, woulda with what I have to say for this movie, but the bottom line is, we're clearly in a transitional phase for the MCU, a phase with which a lot of fans are not very happy, and I think that's the main reason I keep seeing the Marvels getting dragged like it is. Alongside the unfortunate reality that a lot of vocal superhero fans on the internet are probably not wanting to see a movie starring a diverse cast of mostly women directed by a woman of color. But that's far from a problem for me. In the current landscape of the MCU, I am not at all shocked to see the Marvels fail to find an audience like this. People are getting tired of being told what's around the corner, tired of alarmingly bad rumors circulating about the future of the series, tired of fan favorite characters getting shafted in live action because that's just how TV and movies work. I get the frustrations, I share in a lot of them, and I hope I've made that much clear. But I have to be real with you guys, watching the Marvels put the biggest, stupidest smile on my face. I'm talking ear to ear for most of its runtime. And that isn't to negate its faults. I still don't love Kamala's power change, the villain doesn't have much of a screen presence, and for a movie that was boasting about how the plot was so tight-knit that it didn't need to run over 2 hours long, there are a lot of developments that we just kind of speed past that really could have used the extra 10 minutes or so to really sink in. But those issues really don't hold a candle to the good time I ended up having in my theater. You can really feel the love that Nia DaCosta had for the project in the final edit. The Marvels has more respect for both Marvel Comics and the creatives in charge of the individual production than anything Marvel has put out for a really long time. Except for maybe Guardians 3, but that's the finale of a trilogy. Expecting these two to pass the same bar is an exercise in futility. The Marvels is more of a setup movie, putting these characters in different, interesting places for whenever this fabled multiverse saga begins to actually unfold. And that sounds bad. More setup for the MCU? But they made it work. They made me care about where these characters are going to be in the future of this universe, a feeling that did not wash over me after other late-stage MCU projects. Like most of you, I'm starting to get fairly disillusioned with the MCU. It's becoming too much, too fast, too sure that everything will be a hit without considering the audience's perspective. And while this film has not freed me from that pessimistic vibe, it has proven to me that there's still a chance. A chance for these movies to work. A chance for all these new characters with old names to get their time in the spotlight. A chance for the MCU to be something special again. See ya.